Just in case you didn't think there were enough medium SUVs on sale in Australia, there's another one to join the list, the 2025 Geely Starray EM-i. Geely, if you're not familiar, is a Chinese brand that's been operating since the early 2000s. They became really big and over the years have acquired other car makers such as Volvo, Lotus, Proton, Smart, and then they have other collaborations with Renault, including the new horse powertrain, which will supply Mercedes-Benz among other car makers. Geely entered the Australian market earlier this year with the EX5, and that's been rather successful in a short amount of time. They have sold 3,000 to the end of August 2025, and this is their second model. But instead of a fully electric car, it's a plug-in hybrid, competing most directly with the Chery Tiggo 7 Super Hybrid and the newly released MG HS Super Hybrid. The Starray EM-i has a pretty tantalising introductory price of $37,490 before on-road costs for the entry-level complete, and $39,990 for the Inspire model we have here, which includes a panoramic sunroof, 19-inch wheels, a 16-speaker stereo, including headrest-mounted speakers and 7.1 surround sound, and ambient lighting with up to 256 colours. Like some of its competitors, the Starray EM-i uses a 1.5 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. It develops 73 kilowatts and 125 newton meters. It's connected to an 11-in-1 hybrid drive system, incorporating a 160 kilowatt, 262 newton meter electric motor, and the combined system output is 193 kilowatts, which is pretty good for the class. Geely says that because this car was designed from the outset to be a plug-in hybrid, that it has a best-in-class 84.3% packaging efficiency, which means 84.3% of the car is dedicated to passenger space and boot space. It's quite an attractive design, and I can see elements of Honda ZR-V in the side and maybe even a bit of Porsche Macan in the back. It's got a drag coefficient of 0.288, which contributes to its 2.4 litre per 100 kilometre efficiency rating. Boot space is 528 litres with the seats folded up, and there are 3 top tethers for child seats as well. Unfortunately though, there is no spare tyre, but Geely is offering up to 7 years of roadside assistance. So if you do find yourself with a flat tyre, they should be able to help there. What we do have under here is a vehicle to load charger as well as a emergency charger for 240 volt power points. It's in this part of the car, the second row, where that packaging efficiency really pays off. I'm 177 centimeters tall. I've got more than ample headroom, and I've got the front driver's seat adjusted for myself, and I've got acres of room in front of me. So anyone over 6 foot even would not have any issue with this. There's a fold down center armrest with molded cup holders, which is pretty nice. A USB-A and USB-C port, as well as 2 adjustable vents. The floor is extremely flat, and there's just enough room to shift from one side to the other with no dramas whatsoever. The only issue I have is the squab is a little bit short, so there isn't much in the way of under-knee support. You're sitting at somewhat of an upright angle, but Geely does emphasize ergonomics, so they have configured these seats for best posture and the least strain over a long journey. This interior is quite different to what we're used to seeing in the medium SUV class, particularly with this big sweeping element across here with your wireless phone charger and storage here, the underfloor storage that you've got underneath here, and this 2-spoke steering wheel with buttons. It's very serene. It's quite premium looking as well. There's a 15.4-inch infotainment screen here with swipeable wallpapers. The default ones have some cute hamsters and ducks, whatever your preference may be. And then we've got a 10.3-inch instrument panel up here too, as well as a 13.8-inch heads-up display. This rotary controller here can be calibrated to control anything from radio to climate, as well as other functions. And the whole idea is it keeps the minimalist layout of the dash without having to add volume knobs. One thing I quite like is these pop-up speaker elements on the corner of the dash here. And there's even speakers integrated into the headrest of this Inspire model. I'm not sure whether these pillows are a standard inclusion, and although I thought they were questionable at first, they proved to be quite comfortable on a long journey. The competition in this market segment is unbelievably fierce at the moment. In fact, we recently reviewed the Chery Tiggo 7 Super Hybrid and came away impressed at its efficiency, its refinement, maybe not so much its driving dynamics, but overall very impressive and compelling package for buyers. MG's HS has lifted its game as well now, so the second generation is a lot more refined and polished than its predecessor, so those two are very hard to beat. Engineering-wise, Geely might have what it takes to see those two off, however. Things like a full aluminium multi-link rear suspension kind of hints at a bit of Lotus influence, a company which, as I mentioned earlier, Geely does own. They've also learned a lot of lessons from Volvo in terms of safety. This thing has 7 airbags, including one between the driver and passenger. And all the ADAS features that you could poke a stick at, as you might expect. So the petrol engine's just kicked in then, and you wouldn't even know it was on unless you were really looking for that sound. So it's definitely on par with the Chery in that regard, and better than a lot of MGs in my opinion. This driving position's also fantastic. Geely says that the seats have been designed to take 1.3 kilos of strain off your back, and I can attest they're very comfortable. I feel very well supported. There's decent bolstering, and the contours of the seats are really nice as well, so they've done really well in that regard. So I've got this in Sport at the moment, and also the brake pedal in Sport. You can configure 2 settings with that, and Sport is the sharper of the two. I've got Regen at the maximum setting too, and it's not one pedal driving like some other cars offer, but it's noticeable. All right, let's do a 0 to 100. The speed limit's 100 here and there's no one around, so go. 100. It is quite quick, but like other cars of this type, the engine will rev out of step with the movement of the car. So it's a bit out of sync, but at least the engine's refined and quiet. The steering's actually very direct and pleasant. There's a bit of body roll in the chassis because it does have a lot more of a comfort bias. Now, on the drive down, we experienced some of the worst roads in Australia, so it absorbed potholes and dealt with that sort of stuff exceptionally well. So they have gone for a softer sort of chassis calibration, but it's not a soft and sloppy car around corners. It's actually quite decent to drive. In fact, as you're feeding the car into corners, the rear end tucks in, so it's got quite good suspension geometry to be able to do that. It's definitely a better driver's car on first impression than the Chery Tiggo 7 and Tiggo 8 Super Hybrid. The steering's a lot more communicative and you can feel where the car is, and just the behavior of the chassis, it just feels a bit more engaging, whereas the Chery, it's very refined and it's a good car overall, but this is more of a driver's car than it is. So Geely quotes a range of 943 kilometers with a fully charged battery and a full tank of fuel. There is up to 30 kilowatts of DC fast charging, which is quite handy to top the battery up without having to wait too long or having to plug it in overnight. And that keeps it competitive with some of the other super hybrids that are coming out at the moment. This goes up also up against the Leapmotor R EV, which is a different kind of hybrid where it uses the petrol engine as a generator only and there's no connection between the front wheels. This one will deliver power to the front wheels though. Now, when this car launches in late October, Geely is offering some incentives to some of the first buyers, including a 3.88% comparison rate on finance, up to $1,000 towards the deposit of the car, and things like 3 years scheduled servicing. So there are a few options to choose from there. So negatives, the stalks feel a bit tacky. And there was one instance where the indicators didn't work. That could just be isolated to one car. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. There's always going to be little bugs and stuff, but build quality feels really good. Panel gaps are exceptional, and Geely's absorbed all the knowledge from the car makers that it has acquired. So Lotus, in terms of handling, that's why it's got a bit of an edge. The safety from Volvo, and also horsepower train. So they're pursuing the most efficient possible combustion motors, which is why cars like the new Mercedes-Benz CLA are using a horsepower train engine. So it is hard to cut through all the noise of the new entrants in the Australian new car market, but Geely's done a really good job with this, and they've already sold 3,000 EX5s so far this year, so they've done the legwork, and this is quite a compelling product. Again, not a full-on enthusiast car, but competent in that regard, definitely.